Stop. If you're getting on the bandwagon of the argument that literally you should just be renting and that it's easier than owning and interest rates are high, you may not be calculating all the benefits of home ownership. And in this video today, I'm gonna give you 5 tax benefits of owning a home, and at the end, a crazy bonus of the most important reason why you want to own a home and never rent ever again.
One shot, now the future is yours. Go!
Check it out. I bought my first house 20 years ago. I was super young. I was in college. I was a junior, and I had no idea what I was going to do with my life. And yet, I had a mentor that had made over $10 million in real estate, and they said, Kris, you want to own a home as quickly as possible. And as a full-time student, I also had a full-time job, and he said, keep that job a little longer. You almost have 2 years of work history, and if you get there and save up a small little 3% down payment, which for me was like seeing if I could just put $5,000 in the bank, he told me that that would change everything. 20 years later, look at what has happened. Within 4 years of my first house, I became financially independent. Fast forward to today, and like the majority of my net worth is built in the game of real estate with this huge portfolio of all these homes that I have. How did that happen over 20 years like my mentor predicted? Well, from the time I bought my very first home, 4 years later, I was financially independent. So when I graduated college, I didn't have to go get a job. I didn't need a job. I had a small portfolio of 25 homes all rented out that were paying me $12,000 a month. And then from there, I doubled my portfolio, and I doubled my portfolio, and I doubled my portfolio, and I doubled my portfolio. And I'm here to tell you that most people don't understand all the real benefits of owning real estate. But when you're 65 years old and you get to retirement and you're like, how much do I have in my 401k and my IRA and everything I saved versus equity in the one house I ever bought? Guess which one actually makes you richer? None of your savings. What makes you the richest is what you've accumulated in home equity. And at that moment, the number one regret emerges. If I had just bought a few more homes, I would be a millionaire, and I'd be in a very different situation. So today I am honing in on the 5 major tax benefits of owning real estate. Just understand that there's so many other benefits. Like when you buy it, it appreciates over time in value. When you buy it the right way, it has a positive cash flow. It has other benefits, like tenants that live in the house that get it paid off for you. But let's talk about one of the most misunderstood benefits. 80 and whoever cares how many years ago, there was some dead dude that was a president that basically built this country on a constitution that said it's all about land ownership. So like, if you own land, you literally have all the benefits from those that don't. And still to this day, the IRS and our government says that those that own the real estate, they hold the power and they get the biggest benefits, which is why real estate holds the biggest tax benefits. And here are the top 5 right now. If you make money, the government wants some of it, and it's called a tax. And the more you make, the larger the tax bracket and the more you're gonna pay. So at some point when you do well enough financially, you're gonna say, I need more tax deductions. And there's lots. For business owners, for example, there's up to 250 different deductions. But whether you own a business or you don't, the number one tax deduction is owning real estate.
You're not in the burger business. You're in the real estate business.
What is a tax deduction? Well, let's just say that you have an income of $90,000 a year. You're gonna pay taxes on $90,000 a year unless you have deductions, and there's a number of them. And when it comes to real estate, let's just say magically it gave you a $10,000 deduction. Well, instead of the government viewing your income of you making $90,000 a year, they're now gonna say, I guess they only made $80,000 a year. Oh, and let's throw in some of the other deductions. Oh, and you own more real estate? Oh, let's say that you make $70,000 a year, $50,000 a year. For my first 7 years of being a real estate investor, I didn't have to pay taxes because my deductions from real estate were bigger than my income and basically wiped everything out. Tax deduction number 1, mortgage interest. You can deduct the interest that you pay towards a mortgage. And I want you to think about this for just a moment. When you sign up for that pesky 30-year mortgage, you understand that very little of it goes to the principal of paying down the house for the first several years that it's amortized. The majority of your mortgage payment every single month is just interest. So let's just say that your payment is $1,500 a month, and let's just say that $1,300 a month of that actually is going towards interest. Pull out my handy calculator, and I say $1,300 a month of interest times 12 months, that's $15,600 that you get to write off. So in other words, for that person that was making $90,000 a year, now it looks like they're making $75,000 a year. That might bump you into a lower tax bracket, That's not only gonna shrink the amount you pay, but it could put you in a smaller bracket, which means you're gonna pay even less tax. It's actually kind of a big deal. Number 2, real estate taxes. You can deduct state and local property taxes in the year that you pay them. This deduction is limited to $10,000 per year and falls under the same umbrella as sales tax and state and local income tax. If you live in a state with high property taxes or high income taxes, you may not be able to deduct everything that you pay, but the bottom line is it's another deduction and it really starts to add up. Kris, I wonder what my deduction is gonna be. Your CPA is gonna have that information for you. Number 3, home office deduction. So if you have any kind of business, even like an Etsy store, something that is like super part-time, but you use your home as like your home base for doing your business and it's somehow legitimized, did you know that you can take the percentage of your house that you use as an office and you get to write that off?
Nice.
For example, let's just say that my mortgage is $2,000 a month, and let's just say that 15% of my house is considered office, and it legitimately is by the math. Well, then I'm gonna take $2,000, I'm gonna times it by 0.15, and that's an additional deduction of $300 a month. Multiply that by a year, that's another $3,600 that comes off of your income. Now let's just say that your mortgage interest, your real estate tax, and also your office equate to $20,000 that you're actually taking off. Well, if you're in a 20% tax bracket, 20% of $20,000 is $4,000. That's literally $4,000 less dollars that you're paying the government. Does that make sense? So let's just pause for a moment and actually take some of these deductions and add them up. Let's say so far that you have $20,000 in deductions and you're like, okay, Kris, like what does that mean? Like how much am I gonna save in taxes? Your tax situation is individual. Your tax bracket is only something that you and your CPA can figure out. But let's just say theoretically that you are in a 25% tax bracket. And now by deducting $20,000, you're now in a 20% tax bracket. So you were going to save 25% on that $20,000 and basically pay $5,000. Now, by deducting $20,000 from your income, you take now 20% of it versus the 25% tax bracket you were in, and 20% of $20,000 is $4,000. That's literally $4,000 that you were going to give Uncle Sam, the government, right? That you actually don't have to do now because of all these legitimate deductions, and some of which I'm now educating you on that most people don't even know about, including their CPAs. You might want to have them watch this video. Number 4 is called the Augusta rule. And now this is super ninja. Not a lot of people are talking about this, but you can use your house for up to 14 days a year, 2 weeks a year, that you can rent out to a business or to your own business. For example, my house, I use it for board meetings and we max out our 14 days a year. And to rent a nice facility like this for a board meeting, I'd have to pay a certain amount of money. So we take that amount of money, we charge it by all 14 days, and because I'm using my house that way, no money is really exchanging hands, but it's another deduction. And in my situation, that deduction is pretty heavy. The 5th deduction is actually a tax break, and it has to do with something called capital gains. You see, when you buy a stock and own it for a long period of time, or you buy real estate and own it for a long period of time, you eventually sell the asset. And when you do, they have a special tax for that. You're going to have to pay some type of long-term capital gains. And it's not a small amount of money. It kind of hurts. But check this out. When you own real estate, if you've lived in it for 2 of the last 5 years, your capital gains, they literally just go away. Like you don't have to pay them. When I bought my very first house, I knew that I bought it below market and I rented out the basement and basically that covered the mortgage, so my wife and I were living for free. When we moved out of that house, we did a lease option and sold it a couple years later. We made $65,000, but because we lived in it for 2 of the previous 5 years, guess what? We did not pay any capital gains on that $65,000. Similarly, I did the same thing on my second house, didn't have to pay capital gains. Third house, same thing. This tax benefit is actually really big, and for me, it was a critical part of my planning process as I went from not just buying a home to live in, but also something that qualified as a good investment property, a house. And this was a major tax reason that I did it in the beginning when money was sparse. Listen, I've just covered the 5 major tax benefits, but I've got one more bonus I promised you in the beginning coming your way right now. Consider this. At 65 years old, the average retirement balance is $254,000. But at that time, the average person is spending $80,000 a year, which means they've saved enough money for 3 years. And you have 2 choices. Choice number 1 is you can learn to live on half the lifestyle so that you can stretch your money for 6 years and then hope you die. Because in 6 years, you're gonna be older, and trust me, you're not gonna wanna go in the workforce, which means you're really going to just rely on the government, charity. It's not gonna be a pretty picture. However, since your average equity in your home is greater than $254,000, guess what would happen if you just owned 4 homes? You'd be a millionaire, and you need 1 to live in, but the other 3 are now producing cash flow and getting you somewhere. They're appreciating and they're producing all those tax benefits. And when I was young, I told myself, if 1 house makes sense, then why not 10? And if 10 makes sense, then why not 100? And if 100 makes sense, why not 1,000? Which is why I've never stopped. Beyond getting the tax benefits on your own personal home, if you want to learn how to win in the game of real estate, then you should be building a little tiny portfolio on the side. And the good news is it can be done for you. Like, you don't have to play landlord. You don't have to do something you don't want to do. Real estate can be done as a very turnkey passive game. And if you don't know how that works, I've got something very special for you. I call it a multimillionaire's game plan. I'm willing to step in your shoes and tell you exactly what I would do if I were you. And I'm gonna charge you free 99, which basically means nothing. Like, this is a free gift. You don't have to do anything, because I believe that a multimillionaire's perspective that changed my life can change yours as well. All you have to do is click the link below, supply your contact information, and my team's gonna be in touch with you to give you a Kris Krohn game plan. Literally, I train them every week to create game plans just the way that I do, which literally means if your finances are great or crappy, your credit is good or bad, whether you got assets or whether you're starting with nothing like me, there's a game plan on how to build a multi-million-dollar portfolio. And that perspective could end up being priceless and completely change your future. Click the link below, fill out the information, and let me and my team show you step-by-step what I would do if I were you to build a multi-million-dollar portfolio. Because the tax savings are dope, but it's just the beginning of the benefits. By the way, if you're one of those 401kers and you've been sucked into the 401k scam, you need to watch this video right here. I know you're thinking, Kris, it's not a scam. Everyone's doing it. What are you talking about? It's a scam. And if you click right here, I'm gonna share with you what most people don't understand about the 401k, how it's rigged, and why you should never participate in it, and why you should just go heavy into real estate anyway.